In 1940, it was election year. President Roosevelt was attempting on the one hand to play down the possibility of America joining the war, and on the other, quietly trying to aid the Allies. In the interwar years, the American people were very hesitant to involve themselves in another distant war, having lost many young men in World War I. Nevertheless, while the Nazis continued to bombard Great Britain, Winston Churchill had sent delegates to America to plead for help, and Roosevelt felt compelled to assist those fighting the Axis. On September 3, 1940, Congress agreed to amend the Neutrality Act to allow munition sales to the British and French. 50 overage destroyers were sent to Britain in exchange for bases in the Atlantic and Caribbean, marking the beginning of America's moves towards belligerency. In another bold move, on September 14th, Congress passed the Selective Training and Service Act of 1940, which required young men to register with local draft boards. This was the first peacetime conscription in United States history, and by October 16th, as the Secretary of War Henry Stimson drew the first draft capsule, while the nation looked on, registration had begun.
The first number drawn by the Secretary of War is serial number 158.
Thousands of men would now be called into the military services, but as young draftees fought mock battles with make-believe weapons, the United States was not prepared to fight in a full-scale war just yet. Meanwhile, Roosevelt had a difficult tightrope to walk, with a presidential election due at the end of the year. Though there were those who supported intervention, many more supported isolation from the war. And if the president wanted to keep the public happy, he would have to find a way to please both parties. Roosevelt had not been eager to continue to a third presidency. He'd had 2 exhausting terms fighting the Great Depression in the 1930s and was now keen to retire. However, with war on the horizon, his conscience would not let him leave the political arena, and it was evident that the Americans were not willing to part with their president just yet. In the weeks running up to the election, Roosevelt would face a tough battle against his competitor, the Republican Party candidate Wendell Willkie.